Oh,
Well, you almost got 50.
I'm out.
Well,
No money's for me.
dang
$20.
Well, at least I got 20.
We got something. A lot of people talk about profit being made off of imprisoning people and how we don't want for people to be making a profit off of imprisoning people. The United States only had 25,000 less people in jail than China. And China has so many more hundreds of millions of people in their country than we do. To think that they only have 25,000 more people incarcerated than we do means that we are incarcerating people at a percentage rate far, far higher than that government.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julia Allen, and welcome to the Finishing Green podcast. Today, I have Miss Katherine, and today we'll just be talking a little bit about how the law can affect us. And so, first, I'd just like to add, if you would be able to just say what exactly you do for your profession.
Sure. My name is Katherine Curren. I am a partner at Morris, Crawford & Curren. We are a law firm that has two offices. One is in Norfolk, one is in Chesapeake. We do a lot of different types of law. We do criminal defense, traffic, family, trust and estates. We do a little bit of several other issues as well, but those are the main situations that we cover. We have 5 attorneys at our firm, and my husband is one of our partners. One of my best friends, Tiffany Crawford, is another. My husband is Diallo Morris. And we opened about 5 years ago with our first office in Chesapeake, and maybe 6 months later, opened our Norfolk office.
Okay. So how long have you been in this?
I've been practicing law for 15 years. I started out as a public defender in Chesapeake. And when I went to law school, I knew I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. I knew I wanted to be a public defender. It was really important to me that people who do not have wealth have good attorneys, because I think that most of the time the reason that people are convicted is not necessarily because they committed a crime, but because they may not have had the means to do an investigation to make sure that every T was crossed and I was dotted. And so for people who don't have means to be able to access good legal defense is important. And other legal services as well, not just criminal defense, but it's important to be able to make plans for your life, whether it's your business license or making sure that your car is registered and insured and inspected appropriately. Little things can mount up quickly sometimes. So everybody needs to be able to access good legal advice.
So what exactly are some of the cases that you have covered where some of the smaller ones and then the most extreme you've covered?
I very regularly appear in traffic court for people who have driving on suspended licenses charges. And driving on a suspended license in Virginia used to be very tied to financial status, because we had a very unfair law in Virginia that said if you don't pay your court costs on a case, we can suspend your license. And so people would have their license suspended because they were poor, not because they were a bad person or because they didn't care. But when people are trying to choose between things that have to get done and things that don't have to get done, eating, rent, getting your kids in good clothes to go to school, making sure that you can get back and forth to your job so that you can continue to pay for all of those things. All of that's going to come before you're paying a court fine. Yeah. And sometimes our court system can be less gracious than I would prefer. And so our legislature in the last, I want to say about 5 years ago, I'm not exactly sure which year it was passed, but several years ago, they changed the law so that your license is no longer suspended just for not paying a fine or costs. And that has made a huge difference in people being able to continue to drive so that they can continue to make payments towards those costs. It was kind of one of those things where the government shoots itself in the foot. You know, you need the money from those fines and costs to support the work of the court, because we use those fines and costs to pay for other things. They're in the budget. And if you make it so that someone can't get to and from their job, then they cannot make the money to pay that fine and costs. You should remove that barrier. And so they did that. I'm very glad they did that. So that's the lower level that I do. On the higher side, I represent people in murder, rape, robbery, firearms charges, distribution of drugs. I've taken a lot of those charges to jury, and there's, in my opinion, nothing more serious other than a charge that's going to take your freedom from you, anything that's going to remove your children from you. And so I also represent people who are charged in removals where there's an allegation that they haven't done something appropriate with the care of their children. And if their children are alleged to be abused or neglected, I represent parents in those situations. And I also, in the past, have done guardian ad litem work where I represent children under 18 who are in those circumstances, whether their parents are in a custody and visitation battle and they're trying to make a decision about what would be in that child's best interest between those two homes, or in situations where children are being removed and going into foster care or being placed with a family member. I have represented children to determine what would be in their best interest in those cases, whether they need to be returned to their own families or whether we need to be looking at other alternatives for their needs to be met.
Okay. And so I just wanted to ask, what are some of the educational programs that you know of that could teach people about some of these things? Because I know sometimes you don't know it, then it could hinder you later in the future. So what are some educational programs they have for that?
There are not a lot of educational programs out there to teach people that are widely based. I will say I have come in and done a presentation with Young Investors Group before to make sure that people know their rights. The ACLU has cards that you can print offline for anyone, not just juveniles, but adults as well, that tell you about how to know your rights. Most of the time when people think of their rights, they think about Miranda rights, being told, you know, the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. We've all seen it on Law and Order or in a movie. But what people don't realize is that you don't have to be told your rights when you are arrested. The way that right is triggered is when you're being questioned. And so I think one thing that we could do to educate people more is to let them know how those rights, don't just display it in a movie and let them see the rights being said, but we need to make sure that people understand how that works, because I can't tell you how many clients will call and say, they didn't tell me my rights when I was arrested, so this is an illegal arrest, right? Yeah. And I have to say, no, that actually doesn't affect the fact that you were arrested at all. It just means that if you made any statements, they can't use them against you because they're supposed to tell you that before they do. But a lot of people don't know exactly how these rights interact. And so it would be wonderful to have more education on those issues so that people know how to react when they're in the street dealing with it, as opposed to in a courtroom, because you have to deal with those two different situations very differently.
Okay, so thank you. So now we'll just be doing a real quick commercial break, and we'll see you when we're back.
Young Investors Group was created to empower and educate our young African American youth. Our goal is to empower youth by teaching them financial education, real estate investments, to teach them about entrepreneurship, to teach them about wealth management. What does an insurance policy do for their future? Our young investors invest in themselves, they invest in their community, they learn from the generations before them, and they teach the generations after them.
I am not a drug dealer.
I am not a thief. I am more than a comedian.
I am more than a musician.
I am more than a quarterback. I am not a thug.
Because of Young Investors Group, I am a philanthropist.
Because of Young Investors Group, I am a mentor.
Yeah!
Because of Young Investors Group, I am an entrepreneur.
Join us to learn why and how you can join our mission to build the next generation of community investors.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so here we have a game. We're going to be rolling the balls to get money from each of these. And so, hold on. Oh, here they are. Yep. Thank you. And so first, where we left off was just, oh, sorry about that.
Sorry.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so where we left off with talking about how people don't know their rights. Would you be able to elaborate more on that? About that? Sorry about that.
Yes. So I think a lot of times when people are confronted in a situation where someone is questioning them or someone is asking them about their involvement in a situation, they don't know how to handle that. And they think, I might not have to talk to this person, or if I don't have to talk to this person, I don't want to talk to this person. And I always tell my clients that if you're in a situation where you don't want to say anything, you don't want to be confrontational. And it's not a situation where if you're trying to have a power struggle, you're going to win.
Mm-hmm.
If you have that power struggle, I don't want to cheat. Am I
it's
supposed to do it from a certain distance?
Right here. Yeah.
Okay,
right here.
from the end. All right. We'll go for the 100.
Okay.
So you don't want to be in a power struggle with someone. Oh, missed. That you can't win, right? If you are on the street and an officer is trying to ask you questions, if you don't want to answer them, the best thing you can do is say, I don't want to answer these questions.
Okay.
Can I leave? But you don't want to tell them what you're going to or not going to do and that sort of thing, because it might get to the point where you're escalating it, and you don't want to escalate a situation. If you feel like your rights are being violated, one of the things that sounds crazy but is true is that if you don't submit to the arrest that is happening, for example, if you try to run away, you cannot then easily challenge the stop that you felt was wrong in the first place. So the easiest thing to do is say, I don't want to answer any questions. I want a lawyer.
Okay.
That's important. I want a lawyer. And stop there and just let them go through their process. If they have decided that they're going to arrest you, then they're going to arrest you, even if you try to talk them out of it. You're not going to win there. But if you say, I don't want to say anything and I want a lawyer, and you do end up getting arrested, you won't have said anything that's going to get you in trouble later. You'll make your attorney's job easier after you've been arrested.
Okay.
And if the police have done something wrong, if they didn't have enough evidence, or if some of the evidence that they had maybe didn't line up with you and that was incorrect, then you can challenge it in the courtroom. And in the courtroom is where you're going to have a neutral person who's in power, and it's not going to be a power struggle between you and the officer or the official or whoever it is that's trying to interrogate you in that situation. So you're going to have someone to explain that to, and you're going to have an attorney to do it for you, so that you don't have to be representing yourself and being anxious and stressed and not knowing what to say. You're going to have someone else who's trained to do that for you and that knows the issues and knows how to spot those things and produce them to the court in a way that might help you win.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm still going for the 100.
Well, you almost got 50.
I'm out.
Well,
no money's for me.
So let's see. I'm going to get one try.
Who's gonna win?
Let's see.
You got a good chance.
Oh. Thank you.
Oh,
wow. Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
2 more.
Yay!
Thank
$20.
you. Well, at least I got 20.
We got something.
Well, so I just had another question as well. So could you explain the importance of having a lawyer? Because some people may think that they might not need a lawyer.
I will say there is a saying, which is the attorney who represents themselves has a fool for a client, which means you can't represent yourself well. You are emotionally involved in your own life, I hope. And there are other things that you're worried about. If you are the person who's going to jail that day, there's a certain amount of stress that's running in a program in the back of your head that's going to keep you from being able to do everything that you need to do in that situation, to convey all of the information that you want, to communicate everything effectively. That's just a really hard thing to do when you're stressed out and it is about you.
Yes.
So it's a good idea to have an attorney for that reason alone. But number two, the courts are not required to give you any leeway or to help you out in any way if you're proceeding pro se, which is the Latin term that we use in court to mean you're representing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone shows up to court, they may have really great evidence. They may have everything they need to prove their case. But if they don't know the rules that govern the courtroom and the procedure that we use to get evidence into the court's purview, then they may not be able to get the court to actually hear that information. For example, one term that a lot of people have heard of is hearsay. Mm-hmm. Hearsay means someone else said this, but I want you to hear it anyway. Even though they're not here, I'm going to tell you what they said. Okay. You can't tell someone what they said. You have to have that person there to say what they said. But there are a lot of exceptions to that. And sometimes, even if the person isn't there, you can get that information to the court. But you have to know what those exceptions are, and you have to know how to say it to get it done. And that's why having an attorney is really important and a good idea anytime you're going to be in the courtroom. I have never gotten a traffic ticket or had anything else happen where I was not going to consult an attorney if I needed one, and I am one. So I tell everybody, if you think you might need an attorney, call an attorney. Most attorneys will talk to you for a few minutes for free, just so you can kind of give them an idea of what it is that's going on, especially if you have a traffic matter or a criminal matter. A lot of people do those consultations for free. A lot of people will go to the jail and see your loved one for free to see if you want to hire them to be their attorney.
So is there any type of, kind of know some people may not be able to afford a lawyer or a very good lawyer. So what are the situations for that?
If you cannot afford an attorney and you have a criminal charge, then we have laws that are part of our Constitution that say you have a right to have an attorney appointed for you. It wasn't always that way. Someone who felt like their rights were being violated because they couldn't afford an attorney had to challenge that rule and say, hey, you say I have a right to an attorney, but if I don't have any money and I'm stuck in jail and I don't have a phone and I can't go see anyone, like, how am I supposed to get an attorney? And so at some point that got appealed up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, you know what? You're right. We can't fulfill this obligation that we have under our Constitution without providing attorneys. And so you can go to court on your first court date. If you get a warrant, if you get a summons, you'll have something that has your first court date on it. That very first court date, you can say, can I please have an attorney? Will you see if I qualify for a public defender? If you have a civil case, that's something like a divorce, child support, protective orders, landlord-tenant, all those sorts of things. Contract law. We have Legal Aid of Eastern Virginia, which is a fabulous organization. They represent people in those civil matters, and they have an office downtown. I think it's 125 St. Paul's Boulevard, maybe the 4th floor. But you can contact them, go online. It's laseva.org, which they'll have information about whether or not you might have the type of case that they would take.
Okay.
What about the TikTok video?
Oh, yes. So so first I would like to review what exactly we're talking about. So first we had discovered that there was, like, the government is paying private prisons in order to have people in the cells. And if they don't have people in cells, then the government has to pay them for not having people there. So first, I just want to ask, what is your take on that?
So I think what you're talking about is private prisons. And we do have private prisons in Virginia. There are private prisons all over our country. And the idea is that the state, for a while, would be the entity that would build a prison and maintain that prison and take care of it. But just like in a lot of other areas, we have private contracts now where we pay money to a private business to fulfill an obligation that the state would have otherwise. In this area, everybody knows we have so many military members. We have lots of people that retire from the military, go right back to work for the Department of Defense, doing something really similar to what they did before, right? But maybe they make way more money now. In some ways, private contracts might serve our community well. in other ways, it might not serve our community. And a lot of people talk about profit being made off of imprisoning people, and how we don't want for people to be making a profit off of imprisoning people. Our government basically tries to estimate how many people we think we will have in incarcerated facilities. And then when they have those facilities built, they have contracts with the private company that say, this is how many people we think are going to be there. And of course, a company doesn't want to accept a contract like that unless they know that they're going to be able to make a profit. So the way that they do that is with a guarantee. We guarantee you like this base amount of money, and that would be enough to say that you're going to have, you know, your facility will be 90% full or 85% full or maybe 95% full. So if we don't have people to fill up those beds, it could cost us money, depending on what those numbers are, percentages, et cetera. I hope that we have overestimated the amount of people that we think we're going to put into incarceration. I hope that we can change our system such that we can stop incarcerating as many people, because we incarcerate more people than any other country in the world by a lot. I actually just, not in relation to this video, but for something else I was doing for my job, I was looking up some statistics, and I believe it was in 2022, the United States only had 25,000 less people in jail than China. And China has so many more hundreds of millions of people in their country than we do. To think that they only have 25,000 more people incarcerated than we do means that we are incarcerating people at a percentage rate far, far higher than that government. And I think a lot of people think that America is more free than China, and like don't understand the implication of how much we imprison people and how that is related to other historical problems in our society, like racism.
So I have a question that will piggyback off that. We know that there's an issue with this, but do you think the government is putting a lot more pressure on this besides creating more educational, not educational programs, but programs to help with this issue, like making sure people don't get into that?
That's a great question. So most studies, even not just in the area of whether or not we help educate someone or give them services to keep them out of prison, but it goes the same for investing in early education versus the school to prison pipeline and other things. The more money that our government puts towards helping people earlier on in life, before they are in trouble, the less money we spend later on. And every study that I have ever seen, the Office of Government Accountability and Financing, whenever they are doing research for legislation to see, you know, how much money something's going to cost, inevitably, helping people early on is cheaper than hurting them after the fact to punish them for something that they haven't done right. And so the more we can do to start earlier programming for education, which means helping developing minds that are our 3 and 4 year olds who need interaction and language skills and communication and help processing their emotions, all of that investment leads to less people incarcerated and less money getting sent to private prisons. The investment of social services towards families in terms of helping with childcare, helping with rides, helping with healthcare, helping with tutoring service, all of those things pay off in dividends. If we do it early enough, we won't need to be spending this money and guaranteeing these beds.
And I agree with that as well. So now we'll be getting our next commercial break. So we'll be heading back to you in a few.
To succeed, all it takes is for one person to believe.
Most people think that we won't make it past 18 or we'll wind up in jail. But I made it past 18, graduated, got my diploma.
For teens like Takai Everett, Kezia Hendricks is that person.
My reasoning for being on this journey is pretty much to leave the world a better place than what I found it.
So she created what's called the Young Investors Group. It's a program that targets teens in low income and high crime zip codes to take advantage of opportunities they otherwise may have not been able to.
So we focus on real estate investments. We focus on trading in the stock market. We focus on entrepreneurship through technology and e-commerce.
So how do they put these lessons into motion? Over the summer, the boys made their own soap, went to a vending event and sold it. Here they are learning how to sew their own bow ties. They also were taught the real estate market and how to sell a home.
I'm here to make my own business. I'm here to make money legally.
They even traded in their jeans for a new suit.
Changing the wardrobe was a new one for me. While they were like measuring me and stuff, I was like, I only seen these in like shows and movies. Like this makes me feel pretty special.
Giving them a glimpse at what they can achieve if they dream big and work hard, the boys got a front row seat on a private jet.
That experience just motivated me further to strive for my future. I just want to keep on working so I can get there.
The simple gesture of investing in kids who may have not had that before.
A group of youth that want to do better in life, want to give back to their community, want to mentor to the next generation.
In Norfolk, Erin Miller, News 3.
Welcome back, everybody. And I would just like to ask, where can people find you and contact you in a way?
So obviously we would love for you to check out our website for our law firm. It is mcclawgroup.com. That's www.mcclawgroup.com. I also am trying to be in the entrepreneurial spirit, and we would also love for you to check out at Nectar Landing, which is a lovely vacation spot that I would highly recommend. And I also want to challenge two wonderful women that I know are also entrepreneurs, very business minded, and I would love for them to come on Finishing Green. So Kimberly Vapp from Clear Mortgage, I am challenging you, and Susan Oddie, I'm challenging you to come do an interview and let them see what your specialty is and let your light shine on Finishing Green. Kimberly Vapp is a mortgage loan officer, and Susan Oddie is an entrepreneur. She has a gym. The name of the gym is Better Bodies 757. She's a CEO there. And she also has a financial website. Her handle is at financially.fit_. And she gives great advice and tips for families and youth about how to get themselves into a good financial situation and eliminate debt and grow wealth.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on here today. And we'll like to finish off by just saying that we want everybody to finish in green.